Hi, guys. So I wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about this case because there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding of what the ruling actually is. So I took a look at the opinion. It doesn't end birthright citizenship. Let's just put that out there. Birthright citizenship is in the Constitution enshrined. It's basically written in stone. So that's not going to change. That executive order is almost certainly unconstitutional. But that wasn't what this case was really about. This case was really about the Trump administration trying to strike down universal injunctions. What that means is if any at any point in time the Trump administration tries something and one federal court in any jurisdiction in the United States finds that something to be unconstitutional, what it usually does, it would apply nationwide, right? So, you know, this birthright citizenship is an example. For example, when the Trump administration wanted to deport people without due process, that was an example of something that was stopped nationwide with a universal injunction. And so that is actually the crux of the issue here. They didn't even ask, they being the Trump administration, didn't even ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on the birthright citizenship, specifically because they didn't want the Supreme Court to strike it down. What they wanted the Supreme Court to strike down was universal injunction. And they had to go back to 1789 to the original Judiciary Act, same year the U.S. Constitution was signed, in order to take a look at whether or not it included universal injunctions. And they found that it did not. And so that was, what they decided, the Supreme Court, in a very narrow kind of lacking context, right? So they didn't look at, the whole situation. They didn't look at what's happening, with birthright citizenship. They didn't consider what other things that the Trump administration has been doing. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor both talk about it in their dissent, where they say, hey, look, this administration is just asking for permission to do all these other things that they've come to us with or that have been happening. So, we should look at this in that context. And so the majority decided not to. What does that do? Sotomayor and Jackson are correct that this begins to erode our democracy and our constitutional republic. Why? Because when you strike down universal injunctions, what that forces is for every person who faces an issue with the government. So let's say birthright citizenship. For every person that the government violates their rights with this executive order, every person has to sue in order to, right the wrong, right? One person suing won't cover everybody. Every person has to individually sue. Not everybody has the ability to do that. Obviously, we've seen this government violate people's due process rights, so they won't even have the opportunity or the chance to do it. What this administration does is they rely on that. They rely on the slow moving courts to basically get away with violating people's rights, and then have the basically challenge the court to stop them. So this is worse, actually, because what it does is it starts degrading universal injunctions, which means that every right, not just birthright citizenship, every right here is at stake, has the potential to be violated, and you have to sue to fix it, right? So if there's, Fourth Amendment rights, right? They file an executive order that now they can look at everybody's phone, right? And, let's say that is, on the face unconstitutional. Well, sure, it is, but you can't stop us because now every person has to sue in order for it to be stopped, right? It's not like you can file one case and stop the whole thing from happening. And so that is just really, really bad. Now, what can we do about it? So the easiest thing, and with every Supreme Court case, this is actually the easiest thing that can happen, is Congress can pass a simple law to clarify, to undo whatever the decision is of the Supreme Court. So in this particular case, that Judiciary Act of 1789 doesn't include universal injunctions. Well, Congress can just say, hey, let's pass a one-line bill or include a line in any existing bill that says universal injunctions are the law of the land. And that can happen, right? Now, in this Congress with this president, probably not going to happen. Could it happen in the future? Yes, right? So if we elect Democrats up and down the ballot in 2026, right, and the Democrats now control Congress, both the House and the Senate, they can pass laws, and the president will have to sign at least a law, right? He will have to sign budgets. He would have to sign, defense authorizations. Like, there's so many things that the president has to sign that a Democratic Congress can include in a bill. But that's 2 years from now. Before that, what can happen is, two things. One is they will have to, whenever one of these things happens, right, instead of filing or getting a universal injunction, they will have to file a class action suit, get a temporary restraining order against the government, and a preliminary injunction. With those things, which are essentially procedural steps and obviously a lot more cumbersome, but those things can prevent a lot of these the erosion of these rights from happening or from taking place. In addition, there is another rule, and I can't remember. I think it's Section 706, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Vacatur or vacator or something like that. But essentially, what it does is it prevents agencies, not the executive. Well, I mean the executive branch, but not an executive order by the president, but an actual agency from enacting laws that are unconstitutional or laws that obviously violate people's rights. And there's a whole list of what those elements are. But this particular executive order is unconstitutional, right? The Birthright Citizenship one. And so if the executive order tasks an agency from, with carrying it out, right? Let's say immigration, right? ICE, then that or Homeland Security, whomever, State Department, whomever carries this out, that agency specifically will be prevented from, carrying that out by this particular federal rule. And so the actual Supreme Court opinion, alludes to it, but is silent on it. So they mention that, hey, this is still a backdoor way of getting universal injunctions, and we're going to have to decide that at some point in the future. Well, what does that do? It buys us some time, right? So until that case comes up with the Supreme Court, which might not be until next June, right? A whole year from now, until that case comes up, we will have that as a backdoor option to prevent the government from doing and eroding people's rights. So there are avenues, we're not losing birthright citizenship en masse. That is still enshrined in the Constitution. And so I think, obviously we need to keep the resistance, and we need to, continue to work against this administration that continues to want to violate people's rights and laws and the Constitution. So, yeah, I just wanted to come on here and kind of give you guys a quick background on all of that. I know this was a long video, but obviously very important.